This is Smithy.tv.
Hi, I'm Katie Ullman reporting for Katie Chats here at Smithy TV in downtown Toronto with film critic and author Richard Crouse. What inspired you to get into film criticism?
Well, I've spent my whole life in movie theaters, and I thought, there's three things that I'm good at: reading books, watching movies, and listening to music. And I thought there's got to be a way to sort of figure that out somehow. And I grew up in a very small town with an amazing movie theater, and it really was kind of the beginning of my education in film. Was living in a small town far, far away from every other kind of main distribution hub. So I would go see everything that played at this theater, but in the days when I was growing up down there, it wouldn't be Saturday Night Fever on the weekend that it opened. We'd get that a year later, and a reel would be missing, or something would be wrong with it by the time we got it. What we got was whatever movies they could find, and so I'd go see for a Saturday matinee. I'd go see Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, although it would be June or July when we saw that. And then I'd go see a double feature in the afternoon, and it could be like Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon and Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker, a weird 4-hour-long Russian science fiction movie. And I went to see it all. And that's kind of, from the beginning, I always wrote about films. I would leave movies and sort of write my thoughts down on them, and that's just sort of eventually it started paying.
And growing up in Nova Scotia and going to all these films, are there any films in particular that really stand out for you that really made you passionate about film?
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, the Paul Newman movie, that had this amazing shot. Someone gets shot in it, and then the camera sort of pans down and shoots part of the scene through the hole in the guy's stomach. And I remember as a 12 or 13-year-old kid, that blew my mind. All the stuff that was kind of big in the moment. The Planet of the Apes movies, were awe-inspiring to me, even though I look at them now, and quite clearly they're wearing rubber masks, but I kind of love it. I kind of love that look of it. And the Poseidon Adventure and The Sting. And I remember going to see the Ten Commandments when they still had intermissions in movies. And so all that stuff just made a huge impact on me. This town that I grew up in, Liverpool, was at one point going to be a port. They were going to turn it into this great port city, and it never happened. But we had a grand hotel, and we had this amazing opera house, which eventually became the movie theater. The building that I grew up in was a vaudeville theater that had been reconverted into a house, and my dad had a store underneath it. And so the city, or this town, 1,000 people in it probably, had some really cool things in it. And this movie theater for me was kind of the center of it all.
And you've now written 8 books. Tell me a little bit about your most recent one, Raising Hell. Yeah, this one's called Raising Hell, Ken Russell and the Unmaking of the Devils. And it's a look back at a movie that I probably would have gone to see at the Astor Movie Theater in Liverpool, Nova Scotia, had it made it that far, but it never did. It's called The Devils. It is one of the most controversial, banned, censored, completely kind of reviled films of all time. But it's a masterpiece, and I really thought that it deserved to sort of, get a wider audience. So I tracked it down. It's hard to find an uncut version of it, because that's what lies at the center of the controversy about this film, is a couple of scenes that blew people's minds in 1971 and continue to do so 42 years later. But so I tracked that down, and then I interviewed the director, Ken Russell, who was at one point one of the most influential film directors in the world, largely forgotten about in his later years. I found all the actors. I became a movie detective, and I found everybody. Tracked down the guy that wrote the soundtrack in the Orkney Islands in Scotland. It was a trip. Is there anything in particular that really stood out for you, that blew you away when you were playing detective for this book?
Well, yeah. I mean, for one thing, how eager everybody was to talk about the movie. It is a masterpiece. It's based on a true story. It happened in Loudun, France in 1634 about 3 people, essentially. Cardinal Richelieu, true-to-life character, who was trying to change France into an entirely Roman Catholic country, a Catholic priest, or a priest played by Oliver Reed in the film, and a nun who fell in love with the priest, played by Vanessa Redgrave. And the movie is about demonic possession, about all sorts of stuff, which is partially why no one's seen it, or not very many people have seen it. But the people that were in the film were so excited to talk about it because no one had asked them about it for 40 years. And so tracking them down was a bit of work. It took 2 years to find everybody, but everyone was very open.
And when you're critiquing film, what do you look for, and what makes a good film from a bad film?
If I like it. I mean, it's really that simple. I don't go in. There are people I know. I see a guy at these screenings that I go to that has a little checklist, and I see him checking things off and giving numerical scores to things, and I don't really understand that way of reviewing a movie, because for me it is about an overall experience. There are things that are very important. I like a story, although I loved The Master, which didn't really have a story to speak of. It does, but the story is not the most important thing. I like great performances, although, not every movie has them. In some movies, if I am convinced or swept away by the story, I can live with not a great performance. And so it really is an overall kind of thing. I like seeing movies in the theater. I like watching them on the big screen because it's sort of immersive. And really, if you're doing your job, or if the director and the actors have done their job, you will only pay attention to what's happening on the screen and nothing else around you. And so that's how I do it. I just let it wash over me, and then I go by my gut.
Having seen so many films, do you think there are any keys to connecting to this story, or anything in particular that help you to enjoy it more?
For me, there's as many different ways of connecting with films as there are directors or actors. And, so no, no, I don't think so. And I like to be surprised. I like to be surprised when I go to the theater. That's why a movie like The Master worked so well for me, because it took me to places that I would not have expected, and that I couldn't have expected. It showed me performances that I wouldn't have expected. So I guess maybe that's the door in. If you surprise me, then I'm probably going to give you, I don't do thumbs up, but if I did.
And how has film criticism changed in the years that you've been critiquing, and where do you think it'll be going in the future?
Well, it's funny. There's probably more film critics now than there ever have been. There's probably less film critics making money and getting paid for it than there ever have been. With the internet, there's a proliferation of people who write about film and share their passion online. I love that. I'm not necessarily one of those people that's going to go home and write a 30,000-word essay on a movie that I've just seen. But I'm certainly, someone who's disciplined enough to go back to my office and write a 400 or 500-word review about something that I've just seen, and keep it concise and make it understandable for an audience. So for me, how has it changed? Pieces have gotten smaller, they've gotten shorter. There are fewer outlets for them in mainstream media, although far more online and in other places. So like anything else, it's an evolving thing. And I don't think that, film criticism in any way is near the end of its run. I do think that it will change and evolve and find different ways of presenting itself. But for now, I think it's still very much alive and thriving.
And do you think you'll be writing some more books in the future?
Oh, I hope so. Yeah. I tend to pump out a book every couple of years, and when I'm not doing whatever else that I'm meant to be doing, I really like the idea of getting completely immersed in it. The Devil's Book took 2 years to write, and it was a thrill. Every day I looked forward to finding somebody, some obscure 80-year-old actor who was in the movie for like 2 minutes, and I would track them down and find them, and I looked forward to it every day. And so I'm hoping, absolutely, I've got 2 more projects on the way, and then we'll see what happens after that.
And where is the best place to find out more information on you and your books online?
richardcrouse.ca, or from my publisher, ecwpress.com.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Richard. Congratulations, and best of luck with the book.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you. I'm Katie Ullman reporting for Katie Chats here at Smithy TV in downtown Toronto.